Hi, everybody. It's Amy. Thank you so much for reviewing the K-3 situations. They are hot off the press. We are looking forward to getting your feedback and your suggestions so that they can be the best that they can be for teachers. A little bit about this overview for you before you review those situations. We're going to give you just a little bit of an overview of the K-3 assessment vision. What is this whole thing about? And then we'll dive into those situations that you'll be reviewing so you'll know what it is that you're looking for. And then we'll talk a little bit about the review process, how you're going to submit your input and feedback. So a little bit about our K-3 assessment vision. Our K-3 assessment vision is formative in nature such that it guides instruction and learning. We envision that this formative assessment process supports the kindergarten through third grade years and within 5 domains of learning and development. This formative assessment process is more than just taking a look at mathematics and reading. It really is thinking about the whole child and such areas as emotional social development, health and physical development, and approaches to learning. So like I said, it's formative in nature, and what we mean by that is the definition that DPI adopted and the one that the Chief Council for State School Officers created in 2006. And basically, the concept of formative assessment, just like you have probably heard about in NC Falcon, is that it's a process that's used by teachers and students, and it occurs during instruction so that the teacher can adjust the instruction and the student can adjust their learning in order to reach those instructional outcomes. So it's something that occurs within the regular instructional routine. So in order to support this formative assessment process for occurring in the K-3 grades, we have been working on developing what we refer to as learning or construct progressions, as well as assessment means. Some of you all have been reviewing our learning progressions and know a little bit about it, but for those who don't, let me make sure that you understand what these are, because those assessment means you'll be reviewing are directly linked to them. So learning progressions basically are a continuum of skills about a particular construct or concept, and they develop from less sophistication to more sophistication, so that along the continuum you can see the sequence of skills and understandings that students move through in order to reach a potential goal. So it might look something like this. This is an example of a learning progression, which includes an understanding, which identifies the major concepts within a particular construct. And then the skills. Those skills identify those competencies within that particular understanding, and like I said, range from simple to more complex levels. So in order for us to learn about where our students might fall along the learning progression, we have been identifying and working and developing particular assessment means. We realize that there's lots of ways to gather information about students, many that teachers are already using. In order to help this effort within the formative assessment process, we've been developing things called situations, tasks, and ways that families can contribute. For today's purpose, what you'll be reviewing are the situations. Now, all of this information, all the evidence that's collected, is then going to be input into an electronic platform. And this electronic platform is going to help teachers identify where students are within those various progressions and help identify what to do next with instruction. So let's dive a little bit into those situations that you'll be reviewing. What are they? First of all, they are planned activities that are suggested to the teacher that give guidance for how to set up a possible learning activity to discover what they can find out about their students. And they learn about their students through observation and probing. So evidence that might be collected can include anecdotal notes, it could be photos, videos, work samples, and so forth. Okay. So these particular situations that we wrote, again, are examples. They give a brief illustration of what a classroom experience might look like that would enable a teacher to uncover information about their students as related to the particular progression that it's identified to with. It'll describe a little bit about what the teacher might say or do, particular things to observe during that particular experience. It'll offer some probes to use to learn about students, and I'll show you some of those and what we mean by that. It'll also give you some observations and ways that it connects back to the progression, as well as highlighting the fact that these particular skills along the progression are likely to be seen within a regular instructional routine. And so it highlights other areas that you might see that in addition to this example that we've provided. And again, all of this information that's gathered then helps the teacher make a decision about where a student might fall along that progression, so that they can determine where to go next with a particular student or group of students. So let's take a look at a particular situation. Here's one that is perseverance and individual assigned activity. And what you'll notice is that the top row addresses the construct progressions and the skills targeted. And so as we've unpacked earlier what a progression is, you'll see understandings and you'll see the skills. And notice that the skills progress from A through I. Again, from less sophistication to more sophistication. And currently we've just lettered them that way just so we can easily refer to which skill that we're talking about. And so the construct progression, the skills targeted for this particular activity are identified first on the situation. The next piece of a situation is something we refer to as preparation. And this is going to list or describe any preparation a teacher might need to do or any materials that the teacher's going to need in order to implement this particular activity into the classroom. The next row addresses the general description of a situation. So this is, in a nutshell, what the activity is and what the possible contexts are. So that way a teacher can quickly identify this is a whole group activity that I might do within my reading instructional time. Okay. The next piece of the situation that you'll be reviewing is kind of unpacks this particular situation, identifying what the teacher might say or do and observe during this situation. So it suggests how a teacher may introduce the activity. It offers possible instructions that she may give to the children and describes what the children may say and do and how the teacher would respond. Now remember, the situation is written for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. So the directions here, as you'll notice, are more global, and then the individual classroom teacher can then input the necessary content or context as what makes sense for that particular teacher. So remember that these are written with K-3 teachers in mind, and a lot of the questions ask you about whether that was evident. All right, so another section of the situation that you'll be reviewing are called possible probes. And you'll see suggested probes and probes to avoid. So the suggested probes offer some open-ended questions or statements that a teacher could use to invite a student to illustrate what they know and are able to do without instructing the student. Because the overall goal of this assessment is to learn what is it that my child or my student understands, and how can I best learn that information. Sometimes I can learn it by just simply observing the child. Sometimes I might want to probe a little bit deeper just to see what is it that they're thinking or what is it that they know without instructing them. Then the probes to avoid are those that are more instructional in nature or that inadvertently provide the answer for the students, right? So this isn't about finding the right answer. This is about finding out what my students understand so that I can continue to instruct them. The next section is what the observation might mean. And in this section, you're going to find an observation, which is kind of this brief synopsis of what a teacher may observe a student do or say or show or make. And then it's going to link it back to the progression. What is the best fit? So based on this information that I've noticed during this observation, where might the student fall along that progression? And then it'll identify the skill in the letter. The last section is acknowledging that the particular skills identified on the situation can be observed in many situations. So the observational opportunities row describes the various ways that teachers could observe that progression within that daily instructional routine. All right, so now that you understand what the situations are that you're going to be reviewing, how is it that you're going to go about doing it? So some of you all listening to this have been identified as our content reviewers. And if you're one of our content reviewers, then this slide is for you. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to help us ensure that the situation allows students to demonstrate the skills identified. So the skills along the progression are identified at the top. Did the situation directly link to those particular skills? Or were we off somehow? Are we uncovering information and collecting evidence on something that's not quite related to the skills as identified? We want to know about the probes. Are they instructional? Are they leading? Because that's not the intention. We want them to be open-ended. So help us think about those probes and identify additional ones that teachers may want to ask. We also want to make sure that it's supporting best practice. So as a content expert, does that situation illustrate effective instructional practice for K-3? You know, and what the research says. And of course, we want suggestions for refinement, how to make these better. Again, these aren't all the questions that you'll be answering as a content reviewer, but I think it gives you the general gist of what it is that you'll be looking for. Now, some of you all are teacher reviewers. And as a teacher, we need you to try these situations out with children. So when you're working with students, pay particular attention to whether the directions make sense. Did the experience even give you some good information? Was it related to the skills identified on the progression? Did the probes help? Were there additional probes? How else might you uncover what students understand about those particular skills? Then we want just overall feedback about the situations. Could it really be embedded in daily instructional routine? Is it manageable? Did it illustrate best practice for early elementary grades? Is this what's going on in K-3 classrooms? Is it reasonable? So we really want to know what it is that you thought about it and how to make it better. We also have reviewers who are taking a look at the accessibility of these situations. We want to make sure that these situations are applicable to as many students as possible. So if you are one of our accessibility reviewers, then you are reading to make sure that we haven't inadvertently included information or set up potential barriers to which prevent children from showing what they know and are able to do. So we're looking for you to identify those potential barriers and help us come up with additional ways to prevent those barriers. And then if there's any additional probes that we could ask, what might be helpful for students. All right, so now that you know what your role is, how do you submit your feedback? So you may have noticed in the email that there's a link provided to a survey. What you'll do is you'll enter your information on that electronic survey. Now, a few of you are reviewing more than one situation. Most of you are just reviewing one. However, if you are reviewing more than one situation, you're going to need to submit a separate survey for each situation. So make sure you carefully identify which situation you are providing feedback on so that we make sure that that feedback gets to the right team so that revisions can be made. All right, I realize it's not a whole lot of time. Of course, everything is time limited. However, we would love to have your feedback by Monday, September 22nd. And for those of you who need Monday, we can hold off until Monday afternoon to get your feedback. So make sure you submit your feedback electronically by that point. We also realize that sometimes electronic feedback is really helpful. You can articulate what it is that you're thinking through writing. And other times, or in addition to that, there might be an opportunity or it might be helpful to articulate what it is that you're thinking or your feedback by way of a conversation. So if you are interested and would like to set up a time to debrief your feedback and explain a little bit more about what you were thinking, if you're a content reviewer or if you're reviewing for accessibility, please feel free to contact me directly and we can set up a time to have that conversation. If you're a teacher reviewer, and there's quite a few of you all across the state, and you would like to set up a time to kind of share your thinking and additional thoughts that you couldn't express through the writing or the written feedback, then we'll invite you to contact your regional consultant. That way you can make sure that you can set up a time with a person who is in your region who can have that conversation with you. So look for that information in the email about who you might be contacting. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for spending your time and energy and your willingness to provide honest feedback. We cannot do this without you, and we truly value your input and suggestions. So we're looking forward to learning from you all. Again, if you have any questions or need additional information, feel free to contact me. You have my email address. All right, thanks, everybody.